Welcome to the Purity After Promiscuity podcast, where we are redefining a woman's worth. I am your host, Janelle Renee, and we're back again with another episode. How you guys been doing? Happy Valentine's Day. I know I'm a few days late, but I just want to say to all my little listeners, I appreciate you, and I'm so excited to be here today. And so before we get started, we are going to unleash the countdown, y'all.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like I said, guys, this is another episode, and we are here talking about never too busy for God. Because y'all, that's a thing, and it's so subtle how it creeps in. And so before we talk about today's content, and I want to just say thank you guys so much for all the support that you've been giving me, for all my little listeners all around the world. I see you and I appreciate you. Continue with the momentum. Continue downloading, streaming, listening. Continue sharing. Share with your community. That's how we get more visibility. Like on whatever platform you're listening on. Comment if you can comment. Leave a review. But that's just the way we are able to get in front of more people, so more people can hear what it is that the Lord is saying, and more daughters of God can begin to redefine their worth. Amen. And so we are here becoming holistically whole and living life on purpose, for a purpose, and in purpose. And so I just want to say, hey girl, hey. All right then, how y'all doing out there? Let me know how you guys are doing. But yeah, I just felt in my heart yesterday. I heard somebody, I was actually reading something. There were some cliff notes that was posted in the community on YouTube of a podcast that I periodically will watch. And in the notes, it said, never be too busy to spend time with the Lord. And that pierced my heart, because I have gotten to such a place over this last, I would say, 2.5 years, going on 3 years or so, where prioritizing time with God has become very difficult. And in the onset, it was difficult because of all of just the circumstances that I had going on. I was just dealing with a lot of traumatic circumstances. I was going through a lot of abrupt, unexpected changes. I was going through loss. I was going through warfare. I was going through the unknown, being thrust into another season of the wilderness. And, sometimes when you're, in the midst of that kind of season, it's hard to, really get to that place where you are able to focus and have that undivided, uninterrupted attention to read your word, to just pray. And I would pray, because obviously when you're in a dire situation, you do what you know to do to survive. So prayer was there, but it wasn't intentional prayer. It wasn't prayer like it used to be. Like I used to get into my prayer closet, and I could get lost in prayer. I could get lost in intercession. I could literally just get lost in just laying on my face and not saying nothing. And so it wasn't that. It was more of a crying out to the Lord, because I needed him to help me. I needed him to save me. I needed him to rescue me. I needed him to deliver me. I needed him to fight for me. And so it was just, prayers of crying out to the Lord, because I needed him for help, not just to spend time with him. So I started going down that lane, and I found myself it becoming more and more difficult to just prioritize intentional prayer. And I found that it became more and more difficult to prioritize reading the word. And in that season, sometimes we just in survival mode, y'all. Like, we just gonna talk about it, because I don't think a lot of people talk about it as a Christian, as a Christ follower, like get into a season of survival mode. Like, we know that you can just be in a season of survival, or just be in a survival life, right? You're just surviving. Like, you're never thriving, you're never living, you're just surviving in life, right? You're going through, different seasons of life, and you just kind of feel like you never get a chance to really get ahead, to really get to that place where you can rest and there's abundance, there's more than enough. When you're in survival mode, it's always a hustle. You hustling, you trying to get it, you doing what you got to do. When you're in survival mode, your mind not at rest, because even when your body is trying to rest, your mind is thinking. You're constantly spinning your wheels, trying to consider and trying to contemplate and trying to figure out, like, what's the next move, what's the next thing, how I can get to this next place, and so on and so forth. So when you're in survival mode, it's just you're constantly, you're constantly moving. You don't really have peace. You don't really have rest, right? You're not really, content. You're just surviving. And so we can be that in life, right? We can, go through that. But as a Christ follower, as a daughter of God, we can be in survival mode in our faith. So what do I mean by that? I mean, like, we're just literally having that mustard seed size of faith, okay? And you're just having enough faith just to keep going. You have enough faith just to get up the next day. You have enough faith just to get through the day. You have enough faith just to get up and go to work. You have enough faith, like, just to do the bare minimum, because, like, you're almost at your breaking point. Like, the warfare is intense, right? You feel like God is far. He's not answering no prayers. You're crying out. He seems distant, right? Things are not making sense. You're confused because you're like, God, I thought you told me this. I thought you said this. Your word says this, but my life looks like this. It says you won't forsake me, but I feel forsaken. It says I'll be above only and never the tail, but I feel like the tail. You're surviving. And we get to that place in times when we are in the wilderness, especially because the wilderness tends to be that dry place. The wilderness seems to be that place where, things are happening, but it's like how the children of Israel was receiving manna. It's like they had came out of Egypt, and even though Egypt was bondage, they had in Egypt, they had luxuries, right? They had a home, they had food, they had melons and avocados and fish, and they had a sense of comfort in Egypt. But Egypt was poverty. Egypt was oppression. So when they go out to the wilderness, they don't have like a house in the wilderness. They're going from place to place. They're following the presence of the Lord. They're being trained, right? They go into the wilderness. They don't have melons. They don't have fish. They don't have avocados. They don't have, access to these luxury food items. They are kind of just like totally depending on God. And then God decides that he's going to feed them daily with manna. And when they first started receiving the manna, they were kind of like, what is this? Like, almost like offended, like, what, we supposed to eat this? Like, what even is it? You know what I mean? And that's how it's like in the wilderness. In the wilderness, like, God doesn't allow you to like be destroyed. He doesn't allow you to like literally like starve. He doesn't allow you to get to that point where you break. But it's just enough. It's just enough. Like, give us this day our daily bread, right? He'll give you daily bread. So he'll give you the strength just to make it through the day. He'll give you the strength just to pray, just to pray enough prayer, just to war enough, right? Just to cry out enough, just to go about your day, just to be present for your children. Like, you'll have just enough. And now it's like you're surviving because every day you're wondering, am I gonna have enough? And sometimes we get to that place in our faith and we like, God, like, yo, this here, all I can do is survive. All I can do is make it moment by moment. all I can do is make it second by second. Like, this thing is hard. This thing is crushing me. This thing is, I feel like the walls are closing in on me. The ceiling is getting lower, like I feel like I'm being backed into a corner. You just feel like, like that things are working against you and not for you. And when we're in that place, and when we're in that wilderness place, it is like being at a fork in the road. There are two paths, and you can take either one. One path is going to lead you to where you become more distant from God. One path is going to lead you to where you come closer. And depending on how you interpret the wilderness, is going to depend. That's what's going to determine your direction. My God. Depending on how you interpret the wilderness is going to determine your direction. And for me, I see looking back like, oh, I took the path of becoming distant from God, where I didn't fight hard enough to maintain that intentional time. Like, I didn't guard it. I didn't prioritize it. I didn't, continue to keep it at the forefront. I allowed circumstances. I allowed my feelings. I allowed my emotions. I allowed, the things that I was dealing with. I allowed the things that I was going through. I allowed, all of these things to chip away at my intentional time with the Lord. And then it's like, over time, he became more of a second thought and not a first thought. And I begin to design my life to fit him around my schedule versus fitting my schedule around him. And I find that I have gotten to a place now. So that was, like I said, about 2.5 years ago. It kind of started because I was in that hard place. Come on, somebody. That hard press. But when the Lord started bringing me out, he started slowly bringing me out 2024 by allowing me to get back into my assignment, allowing me to get back into a part of my purpose in my career. He started slowly bringing me out. And then, he answered my prayer. He allowed me and my children to get our own place, and not just a place, a beautiful place. And I thank him so much for it. I am so grateful. I mean, grateful, right? He's increased my business. He's elevating. He's multiplying. He's, speaking. He's giving me direction. He's even calling me to get back into other phases of purpose in my life. And now I'm becoming too busy. And I want to say this because God does not mind increasing us. Let's start there. I think sometimes we get a wrong idea of God. Like, we think we serve this poverty God. We think we serve this lack God. We think we serve this God of torment, where he just desires and delights in us being, impoverished and broken, busted and disgusted, and, constantly struggling and striving and constantly trying to, it's like crabs in a bucket. You're just trying to get out. You're just trying to climb. That is not the kind of God we serve. However, we do serve a God who is all-knowing. We serve a God who is sovereign. We serve a God who knows more of us than we know of ourselves. We serve a God who knows our tomorrow and is in our today and our yesterday. And because of that, he knows what's going to pull our hearts from him. So sometimes he keeps putting us in the fire because he's trying to refine us. So when we come to this place of elevation, that we don't get distant. This is why he kept imploring the children of Israel in the Old Testament, don't forget the Lord thy God. Do not forget the Lord thy God. Because he knew he was taking them to a place of abundance, taking them to a place of increase, taking them to a place where they was going to have more than enough. They were in the land of milk and honey. They were in the land of increase. He knew he was taking them to that place, and he wanted them to be sure. Like, you think because you're in the low place that you're not going to forget, because it's easy to cleave to God in the low place. because you're desperate, because you need him, because you are dependent totally on every move, everything. You need him for every moment. And so it's easier to cleave to him in that low place. But when he take you to the mountaintop, and you don't necessarily have the same issues or the same needs, and so you go from needing money to having money. Come on, somebody. You go from needing a home to having a home. You go from needing a car to having a car. You go from being single to being married. You go from being childless to bearing children, right? You go from, starting a business and having no customers to having more than enough customers, right? Like now you busy, you booked, your people are booking your services. You're making money. You go through that transition like that, and it's easy. And most of us will sit back and say, oh, I would never forget God. I love God too much. God, he's done too much for me. I would never forget. But I'm going to tell you right now, it is easier than you think. Because when you get busy, when you get in demand, when you're in another level of elevation, but you also are in another level of responsibility. You are in another level of capacity and outpour, right? You are in another level of dealing with people and being in demand, right? You're in another level. It's easy to get caught up in, oh, I got to do this. I got this event. I'm being booked over here. I'm doing this thing over here. Oh, I got to run this meeting over here. I got this business over there. Oh, my family this, my baby's that, my husband this, it's easy. Because we start with something like one morning we get up and we say to ourselves, oh, dang, I got to do this, and this. I'll spend time with God tonight. I woke up a little too late, or I got this thing on my agenda today. This thing is on my schedule. So instead of me spending time with God in the morning, I'll do it in the evening. Okay, that's cool. And then evening comes. And this thing comes up and that thing comes up, or this child thing, or this baby thing, or this business thing, or this unexpected appointment, this meeting that ran over, and then it becomes easy because then now the evening comes, you're like, dang, I'm so tired. Oh God, I'm so sorry, Lord. My heart, I'm tired. I got to go to bed. But in the morning, surely I'll spend time with you. And it just starts, just subtle things like that, right? Or it starts with, like for me, it starts with frustration, right? Feeling frustrated with God, feeling angry with God, feeling like God has forsaken you, feeling like God has just gone silent on you, feeling like it don't even matter no more if you pray. It don't matter if you read your word because nothing is happening, because you've been crying out, you've been praying, you've been fasting, you've been reading, and it seems like nothing has changed or shifted. So you get discouraged. And then now you like, well, it don't even make a difference. It don't even matter if I pray. It don't even, like, because God ain't listening anyway. Then your mind, you start having these voices beginning to speak to you. The enemy begins to play on that vulnerability, and you begin to hear the voices like, it don't matter. God don't care anyway. You didn't read your word. You've been faithful. You've been reading your word. You've been praying. You've been declaring, decreeing. You've been doing all these things, and nothing ain't changed. So it don't matter if I pray. It don't matter if I read my word. It don't matter if I fast. It don't matter. And so you get caught up into that, in that cycle of hopelessness. And now you're comfortable going all day without praying. You're comfortable going all day without reading your word. And then it happens the next day. And then 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 next thing you know, without even realizing it, you done developed a habit. You done developed a habit of not prioritizing time with God. You have developed a habit of not getting into his presence, right? And maybe you're not completely not reading your word or completely not praying. Because here's what's deceiving, I should say. When we say stuff like, well, you'll be in the car on your way to work and you say a quick prayer. Or you go to church on Sunday and you obviously open up your Bible, you reading your Bible and reading the scriptures that your leader is putting up on the screen. Or you get on YouTube and you watch something that is biblical based or some kind of message or sermon, right? And in some way, we deceive ourselves into thinking that those particular practices or instances are in some way a substitution for us taking the time to shut everything and everyone out and say, this is my time with God. I am going to get into this word. I am going to journal. I am going to read this particular scriptures. I'm going to pray, or I'm going to just sit silent. But this is time that I've carved out of my day specifically for God. In the same way, if you have a spouse or you're dating and you make a date, you make a time to go out on a date, right? That is time that you carved out of the day. So no matter what else tries to come up, you don't allow it to interfere with what's on your schedule if it's not an emergency, right? You don't let anything come between that time that you set out to spend that intimate time with the one you love. Well, that's the same way we should be with God. There should be nothing that comes in between, not even a spouse, not even a child. There should be nothing, because how can we be the wife, or how can we be the mother? How can we be the businesswoman if we are not getting the word, if we're not getting the wisdom from the word of God, if we're not hearing from God what it is, the direction, the instruction, the revelation, if we're not getting in his presence to be equipped to even do the things we're doing? At some point, we are so deceived and pride begins to tell us that we don't need God to do it. Never be too busy for God. And like I said, I'm guilty, right? Excuse me. I'm guilty. And it is something that is just like, you can be aware of it, but it's almost like you got so into a routine of not doing it that now it's hard. That's like you've been going hard in the gym. You had a routine, you had a schedule, you was committed, you like, I need these results. I'm about to go hard in the paint. Ain't nothing coming up against this time that I dedicated because I have a goal. Right? Or maybe my health is not where I need it to be and I need to get my levels or my health back in alignment. So I gotta do this because, this is something I need to do. So for my life, for my livelihood, my health. So I'm not going to let anything come in between this goal that I have. Right? So you go hard in the paint. You go to work out, you have your routine, you go 3-4 times a week, you do all the things, you eat right, you just do all the things, right? Boom, you do that for maybe a year, and then after a year, you see your results. Or maybe after a year, something happened and it prevents you from continuing to go forward in your routine. It disrupts your routine. And then now, a day, a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months. Now, 6 months later, you want to go back and thinking that you about to go back hard in the paint again, that you about to pick up exactly where you left off, that you're going to be able to go in with the same momentum, that you about to have the same strength, that you are going to be able to do things at the same capacity. No. You know why? Because your body has gotten used to you now. It has got a new routine. It has gotten used to you not going. It's gotten used to you not working out. It's gotten used to you not being so disciplined and structured. So now it's even the more hard. It's even the more difficult to do the same thing that you used to do at the same capacity because you stopped for 6 months. It's the same thing with your relationship with God. When you can go hard, when you can spend hours and everybody don't have to spend hours. It's this thing is about your personal life. God knows your life. He knows your responsibility. He knows your capacity. He knows all the things. So everybody is not expected to be able to spend 3 and 4 and 5 hours in the word and in prayer every day. Everybody's life don't afford them to do that. But whatever it is, whatever the amount of time that you and God have settled on, whatever you know that you were able to commit to. And it's like when you develop a routine and you're going hard and you're being disciplined, you're being committed, you're going and you're doing that. And then next thing you know, life happens. Next thing you know, some difficult news. Next thing you know, some disappointment. Next thing you know, some failed expectation. Next thing you know, an unanswered prayer. Next thing you know, a tragedy in your life. Next thing you know, you lose your job. Next thing you know, you get a diagnosis, right? It's something. Next thing you know, you enter into a season of warfare. Because in Ecclesiastes, it tells us it's a time and a season for everything under the sun. That it's a time for war. And it's a time for peace. Sometimes it's time for war. And, it just kind of knocked the wind out of you. And next thing you know, you have lost your routine. And then the longer you go without even realizing or even acknowledging and even, trying to get back in alignment, the more difficult it's going to be when you do. And I just want to say to you, don't forget God. Don't be too busy to prioritize your time with the Lord. Like, the time with the Lord and the time in the word and time in prayer should be more important than anything, right? It should. If it's a hierarchy of priorities in our life, that should be at the very top. Because without God, we can do nothing. It tells us that in John, I believe John 15, that apart from Christ, we can do nothing. So everything that he blesses us to do, we need him to do it. Whether we have the skill, whether we have the gift, whether we have the idea, whether we have the mind, whatever it is that he naturally gave us to be able to do it, we still need him to do it. We still need the revelation. We need the wisdom. We need the discernment. We need the direction. We need him to do it. And so when we begin to forsake our time with God, we are out here operating like without, what can I like it to? What can I liken it to? That's so essential. It's like you going to war, right? You enlisted in the army. We are enlisted in an army, the army of the kingdom of heaven. And it's like when you don't pick up that word, when you don't pray, when you don't prioritize time with God, when you don't spend your intentional time with God, it's like going to war with no weapons. You on the front lines, and baby, your enemies, they ready. They weapons. They got their weapons. They ready. They coming for blood. But you out there with nothing. You're out there with no weapon. Because you ain't got in your word. Because you ain't prayed. Because you ain't fasted. Because you ain't took time to just seek the Lord. Because you ain't just got silent before God. Because you have gotten into a habit of not prioritizing your time and you're too busy. If you got to wake up earlier, you got to wake up earlier. If you need to go to bed earlier so you can wake up earlier. If we don't begin to put God first, we're going to miss out on so much. And the enemy is going to find a weak spot. And he's going to come in because our armor is going to have a crack in it. We're going to get to the place where pride sets in and we begin to think we got this. And we can do this all by ourselves. No. God, he's the source. God is the giver of gifts. God is the creator of creation. He's the one that holds this world still in his hands, right? There is nothing we can do apart from him. We can deceive ourselves and think we can. But our natural human abilities only can take us so far. It can only take us so far. And we don't want to be one of those people that as we enter into the time going before the judgment seat and we got to hear, "Depart from me, for I never knew you." We don't want to hear that. We want to hear, well done, thy good and faithful servant. So I just implore and admonish you to, if that's you, like me, who have gotten to a place where you have no longer prioritized your time with God, that you have gotten too, your life has caused you to feel like you're too busy to spend intentional time, or maybe you just got into a season of hardship and you just picked up a bad habit of not reading your word and praying, or if you just feel like you just was in a season where life happened and you just fell off. Listen, get back up, repent, and start where you can. Because here's the thing. Just in the same way you wouldn't be able to go right back to the gym at that same level after you'd been off for 6 months, you're not going to be able to go back to that same level immediately how you used to do. You have to commit to where you are and then expand on that. So if that's 15 minutes a day, every single day without fail, let it be that. If it's 20 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. We have to get to a place where we build those muscles up again. That prayer muscle, that word muscle, that fasting muscle. We got to do it again, right? So that we are able to build back up to that capacity that we used to have, so that we will no longer be too busy. We'll no longer forget God, that God will be a priority, that he will be like the most important thing in our life, in our life, right? That our life will be it will be birthed out of our intentional time with the Lord, right? So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this you help somebody, maybe not. It's helping me. But I did want to make sure that I came on and I just did today's episode. Don't be too busy for God. And so that's today's episode. Thank you all for listening. And just know that your past does not define you. It develops you, and you are worthy.